Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sports with Frank podcast classic Friday edition of the pod. Today we're going to be diving deep into Bundesliga week 2 post COVID-19. We're going to be covering some of the games, going to be giving you my game of the week, my most interesting storyline going into the weekend as well, but also some news, especially coming from Scotland, from England, from Italy, all over Europe regarding the possibility of leagues to come back at some point in the month of June. At the end, we're going to be covering some of the most interesting, in my opinion, news coming from the transfer market. So I'm going to be ranking the top 5 transfer market rumors that are going around at this time. We still don't know when the market is going to be opening, but nonetheless, the news never stop, and we'll see what the most intriguing ones are, and I'll be giving you my opinion on where a certain player would fit in this new team, or if I think this deal wouldn't work in that particular situation. It's time to dive in. This is the Sports with Frank podcast. I'm Francesco. Let's do this. It feels weird, I'm not gonna lie. It feels like yesterday we were talking about the first weekend of football being back on our TVs, and we're already talking about the second one this week. And it feels nice though. It feels real nice. Every weekend, new storylines, new games to look forward to, and I'm quite excited. The more time passes, the more excited I get. So honestly, I cannot wait for more and more leagues to come back, and hopefully they'll be very soon. But for now, I think the Bundesliga provides a lot of entertainment for us football lovers. But as I said, I hope more leagues come back. And talking about that, there is some news coming from all over Europe, to be honest. We have news coming from Scotland with the Scottish Premier League that has been completely cancelled. It was still paused for the time being, but they decided to cancel the league completely with Celtic. They won their 9th title in a row, which is a European record. They don't have much of a challenge going on at the moment, especially after the Rangers Glasgow were demoted a few years back, and they had to come all the way back to the Scottish Premier League. So not much of a competition, but nonetheless a 9th title for Celtic. And, put it in the bigger picture, it has to be said that these leagues, they have less following, and, even in terms of TV money, they make less money. I think it's easier for them to call it off. The race wasn't close for Celtic, so that also made it easier. But overall, for those leagues that don't have that much business going around them, it's much easier to just say, let's stop this. The opposite end of the spectrum is with Italy and England. So in both countries, it seems very, very likely that we're going to be going back to playing at some point midway through June. Italy seems to be closer because the Ministry of Sport has come forward saying that considering that every other industry is reopening, football shouldn't be any less. We know that there was a change in the plans. Group trainings were supposed to restart this week, postponed by the government, but everything seems to be going back into place. Next week on the 28th, there's going to be a meeting between the main figures in Italian football, and they will take a decision on whether the league will restart or not, and probably they're also gonna come up with some sort of schedule. The league year has been moved, so the end is no longer June 30th, and now it's gonna be for this season at least August 31st. So a bit of a change there with the league that is gonna allow basically games to be played until the end of August date. And the new league year would start on September 1st, which basically is going to replace July 1st. That has been the start of league years for many years as well. Now, this is going to be a tricky one because with this change, there is also going to be an impact on the transfer market that we will talk about later a bit more in detail, but definitely that's something that has to be taken into consideration. So I'm sure they're going to be looking into the schedule and a way to arrange everything the best, but it's going to be tricky. Unfortunately, we live in tricky times, and I wouldn't be too harsh on whatever decision they come up with, because we also have to, remember that everybody's in a tough situation at the moment. Nobody knows how to deal with this virus or with its consequences. So I think any sort of solution that allows us to have games back it's gonna be I'm gonna accept it with a lot of happiness. I'm not gonna lie to you. I know the risks that are coming with starting playing again, but I'm probably selfish, but I really want to see it. So if they find a way to play safely, I'm all for it. England, on the other hand, they restarted group training this week. We got some pictures from Liverpool training with Sadio Mane showing off a weird, if I might say, haircut, but the barbershops are closed for everyone, so no judgment here. However, contrary to what Italy is doing, England doesn't seem to have a proper date yet, so it's still quite unsure whether the league will be back. But it seems like they're gonna be going to that direction. Nothing official, as I said. We don't even know when the league should be restarting. So, as I said, Italy ideally should be June 15th. That seems to be the date they're trying to go for. And as I said, they're going to have a meeting, and probably a decision will come up in a week time. England, for now, there is no meeting planned, so I don't know what the idea will be there. But I'm sure they also want to finish the league. We know that Liverpool is probably going to win this league after a long, long wait. So Klopp already came out and said we don't want. There is something more important than the league. If it cannot be completed, we'll have to accept it. And I'm sure he's trying to be polite and he's trying to be as professional as possible. But I'm pretty sure they'll be upset if the league was not to be given to them at this point, even in case of not playing. So I can see the Premier League coming back. I don't know when, but they have fewer games compared to the Serie A. So we'll see what happens there. But the signs are pointing towards a return to play at some point. So that's good news. And of course, we'll talk about it if anything happens in this week. Between podcasts, we'll definitely have it as a main topic for next week episodes if a decision is made. And we'll probably, and I want to stress this, I don't want to jinx it, but it's very likely that we're going to have a definite date on the Serie A by the time I record next week. So that's going to be interesting to talk about and see possible scenarios and the schedule they come up with, because there's quite a lot of games left. If you also include the Coppa Italia, which is the national cup for Italy, and then the teams that are going to be involved in European cups with Napoli and Juve that are still playing in Champions League with their return leg that's coming up ideally in August, according to what the rumours are, with the Champions League coming back on the 7th of August. So Napoli and Juve should be back by then to play the return leg. And then, of course, Inter and Roma that are also involved in the Europa League, where they have to play still both games of the last 16 rounds. So next week we'll have a clearer image of what Italian football will look like, and hopefully some news from England as well. But now let's talk about actual football, played football. And this week there is another game that I'm really looking forward to. So let's go with the game of the week. For me this week, game of the week is definitely Borussia Mönchengladbach against Bayer Leverkusen. So those two teams are very solid teams. Both have very good defenses. Third and fourth in the Bundesliga so far this season. And they're both two teams that are competing for that Champions League spot, which for both teams represent quite an achievement every season. Because if you look at Germany, you have your Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund that are also always up there. And then, of course, the other two spots are open competition. We have had Wolfsburg for a few years, Schalke 04. Now with Leipzig coming into the fold as well. Leverkusen was in the Champions League this season. They were kicked out from the group stages and ended up going to play in the Europa League. And Borussia Mönchengladbach is trying to get back there, where they have made appearance in the Champions League a few times in the past few years. So it's going to be an interesting game, because looking at the standings now, that third, fourth, fifth spot in the table, it's very it moves around quite often. Last week we had Leipzig being third, fourth place for Mönchengladbach, and Leverkusen fifth, and now Leverkusen is still fifth. Mönchengladbach moved into the third spot, but there are 2 points between those two teams. So this is definitely a crucial game, because a win could make Leverkusen jump up, get back into that top 4 conversation. At the same time, Mönchengladbach could kind of make their position a bit more solid at that third spot. I don't think they can go and challenge for the title, because Bayern seems to be unstoppable, and Borussia has been showing great signs of being very consistent. But for Mönchengladbach, this would be a great win because, as I said, you can get the 3 extra points up on Leverkusen, so get the +5 between them. And, that will be at this point of the season an important advantage for them, especially with only 7 games left after this one for both teams. So I can see Borussia Mönchengladbach being very motivated to win this game. And at the same time, Leverkusen, they want to push and get back in Champions League next season as well. So this is definitely going to be an interesting game. Only, just if you consider this aspect of the fact that both teams are actually competing for something still, at high level. So definitely going to be an interesting game. And also there is, a lot of young talent in both of these teams. And, if I have to pick one player for each team that I'm going to be looking at during the whole game, we talked about Kai Havertz the last episode. So definitely he is the guy for Leverkusen. And on the other team, Mönchengladbach, a guy that people, maybe they don't know as much, but they probably know his dad, and that's Marcus Thuram. Marcus Thuram, of course, is the son of Lilian Thuram, which used to be a great defender for Juventus, Barcelona, the France national team. And Marcus Thuram has been showing, great promises this season. He came during the summer, was playing in France, came over, been playing very, very solid football, and has been scoring a lot. He stands now at 7 goals and 8 assists in the Bundesliga alone. And for a guy of his age, that's pretty impressive already. Of course, when you come with that sort of family name, you're always going to be kind of expected to be better than what you probably are. There are some exceptions to that, but that's the nature of the job. When your father used to be a world-class footballer, you always come in with certain expectations. And I think so far Thuram has been doing very, very well for the team. As I said, they're up there, and much of that is due to the great defense they have, but also the striker couple that they have with Thuram and Plea also came over from France. He was playing in Nizza until last season, came over and has also been doing very well. And they are quite a complementary pair. And that's definitely a player I'm going to be looking at closely this weekend, because I think, he's proving to be more than a family name, in my opinion. The numbers are good. Of course, he's a center forward, so his numbers are never going to be, 30 goals a season. But I think the ability that he has to both score goals but also facilitate the other teammates, has his number of assists are showing. I think that's a good quality to have. Regardless of whether you're going to be world class or not, I think having a player like that has the physique to play, all around type of football, but also facilitate other players at that position. We talked about Kai Havertz being, in my opinion, the next great centre forward. And I think Thuram is much behind in terms of his level of play and even his physical abilities. But I can see him being a very solid player in leagues like the Bundesliga, or even going back to France for middle tier teams or upper level like Mönchengladbach could be. Being the kind of player that every year scores that 10, 12 goals, maybe has a season where he goes for 18, but be solid all around and just have a little nice career. Now, in my opinion, that's his floor. Very solid, as I said, all-around player, very solid, but nothing special. He's 23, so he's young. It's crazy to say, but 23, if you haven't exploded yet, you may not be as good of a player. But there have been instances of players that have been growing much more later on in their career than they did at the beginning. But I think the condition where he's at right now with Mönchengladbach, a solid team, a team that doesn't really go out and spend much money, but they tend to, grow the players they have. I think he's going to be provided with the right surroundings to be very good. And, if he has it in him to make that extra push, I can see that happening too. But to be honest, compared to Kai Havertz from Leverkusen, Thuram, in my opinion, is going to be just average for majority of his career with some peaks, but very good for a team like Mönchengladbach, So it's going to be an interesting duel between the two of them. As I said, Havertz I expect much more, but right now I don't see much of a difference between these two players as they are right now. Of course, Thuram is three years older as well, But it's going to be interesting to see them clash, to see who comes back on top between these two teams. And having those two defenses collide, 31 goals apiece they suffered during the season, and that's, as I said, third and fourth best in the Bundesliga. So it's going to be an interesting game for these two strikers as well, because of course, Kai Havertz played against Werder Bremer the other day. Not the greatest challenge, so I'm interested to see how he acts and he plays against a better defense. And for Thuram, the same goes, because this guy could be, showing some flashes this week. And if you manage to do it against a great defense like the one that Leverkusen has, it could be a great sign for him. As I said, I don't know if he'll ever be, if he ever step to the next level, but I think this game could tell us whether he has the right tools to be efficient even against certain types of defense. So this is definitely going to be my game of the week. It's on Saturday, 2:30 UK time, 3:30, European time. But definitely, I suggest everybody tunes in and watches this game, because I think it's going to be, very fun. I predict fireworks in this game. Now, last week was, my first podcast related to the return of the Bundesliga, and I told you then that what I want to do, I want to establish this storyline. So every weekend I want to give you something to think about over the weekend, either related to the games or to the world of football in general. And this week I've been thinking a lot about a topic that's, in my opinion, getting a lot of importance, considering what the transfer market could look like after this pandemic. So here we go with the storyline. So I was looking at Bayern Munich, right? I was looking at their roster, I was looking at the age of the players, and there's something that you can tell is that every year Bayern seems to bring in very promising young talent that are not going to come in and contribute right away, but they're going to bring them in to kind of learn from older players, right? So a couple of years ago, they had Goretzka, they had Tolisso. This past season, they brought in Pavard, Lucas Hernandez, Davis, and Sule came a couple of years ago as well. And they all come into a group that's already established, because Bayern has been winning for so many years, and they have so many German internationals: Neuer, Boateng, Hummels, that now left but has been there for a while. Of course, Robert Lewandowski up top. Talking about Germans, Müller. So a lot of a good core of champions, really, because especially the Germans, they have a World Cup under their belts. So those are guys that will tell you how to behave and how to act as a professional footballer. And it's striking to me how they have this process that every year they bring in talent that's going to be contributing in a certain sense, but they don't need to step in right away, and let them learn from older players, experienced players, players with personality, and that know the values of the team. And I think that that's something that's kind of disappearing in football in general. I think Bayern is kind of an exception to this. And by exception, I mean a team that's able to win and be consistent year after year in the Bundesliga, national cups, Champions League, every competition they play. Even if they don't win, they haven't won the Champions League since 2013, but still every year it's a team that when you start a competition you say, yes, they could win this year. And the Bundesliga, I mean, they win year in, year out. They had some pauses in the middle, but it was never too long between championships for them. And they managed to stay so consistent, at the same time just get younger without putting on the young players the pressure to be stars right away. And I think this is a mistake that's been made by many, many teams in Europe. Manchester City or Manchester United. It's honestly the example that comes to my mind all the time. It's Manchester United. This is a team that lost completely track of what to do once Alex Ferguson retired. So the timeline actually fits, because both Bayern won the Champions League in 2013 and Man United won their last championship in 2013, with Alex Ferguson retiring after that, and of course David Moyes coming in. That wasn't a great experience, and from then onwards was just a continuous exchange of coaches, with Van Gaal coming in, Mourinho, and now Solskjaer. So it's a complete opposite of what I think a good strategy like Bayern Munich could be. Because if you think about Manchester United, what they've been trying to do is just overpay for these young players like Martial or Pogba or Luke Shaw, Bailey. All of these players, they came in at a moment where they didn't have that extra surrounding that could help them to improve. So if you now look at the players, Pogba came into Manchester United as one of the hottest players in the world from Juventus. He had an amazing season at Juve before leaving. He went to a Champions League final the year before. He came in 2016 and was this huge star. The guy comes in, biggest transfer ever before Neymar and Mbappe happened. But he had a lot on his shoulders, and he didn't have anything around him to help him getting it right. The same goes for Martial. The guy comes from Monaco after half a season, good season, comes to Manchester United. He's misplaced, misused, put all over the place. Nobody gives him any time to learn how to be at a bigger club like Manchester United, especially coming from Monaco, a team that, even in France, at this point is not a big club anymore. Yes, has been producing great stars lately, Fabinho, Mbappe, Bernardo Silva, but those stars all left, so there is no culture there either to learn from. He comes to United and he has nobody to learn from. Luke Shaw, another failure in my opinion, because when he comes in, he's expected to start a left back for a team like Manchester United at a young age with no help whatsoever from any older player that could give him that mentality. It's not even, I'm not talking about tactical. I'm talking about giving you the right mentality to be at a club like this that would prevent you from ruining your career by, becoming too full of yourself or doing this or doing that. All the things that you shouldn't do as a footballer. If you don't have anybody who tells you not to do these things, you're always going to end up kind of performing lower than the level that you could perform otherwise. So I think for this weekend, I want to give you, this idea that I think people should look at more, the model of Bayern Munich. So I think a lot of teams should look at Bayern and what they're doing, bringing all these young stars now when they still have a good enough team to win, because that's going to prepare the other stars to be super, super good in the future and much better than what they could have been without the help of more experienced players. So to conclude this storyline for this week, I think people should really consider in whatever club you support, look at your club and think, are they doing it like Bayern are doing it? And don't get me wrong, it's not about money here. You can get nice young players and very efficient players even as smaller amounts of money. That's all like an equilibrium between what you want to achieve and what you're going to be spending for a certain player. That doesn't matter. The idea here is you're preparing for the future while you're winning like Bayern, and that's a recipe that's always going to lead you to more and more wins. I had quite a lot of fun writing down some notes about it, and it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, I'm not going to lie to you, but for now I'm going to leave it there. And as I said, I hope people enjoyed it and they have a thought about their clubs as well. But now I want to move on to something that really excites me. And that is weird to say, because at the end of the day, you read a lot of news about transfers, but you're not involved at all. You cannot even watch a transfer unfold. It's not a football game you can watch and enjoy. It's just something that happens. For some reason, it gives me joy. So I want to share that joy with you with my top 5 transfer market rumors. Before we dive in with my number 1, I just want to say something. It's becoming clearer and clearer that this summer it's going to be a weird one in terms of transfers. It's going to be a lot of player swaps, because the teams simply don't have the firepower to be as effective as they've been before. Even bigger clubs, Man City, Barcelona, Real Madrid. At the end of the day, this virus has affected everyone. The amount of money you will lose percentage-wise is very similar, and that's going to affect the way the players are moved around. So I can see a lot of those swaps actually happening. All I know is that it's going to be an interesting transfer market window for sure. Regardless of who's getting moved, it's going to be interesting to see how teams actually, get creative and manage to get deals done that people don't even think about right now, but they manage to get it working. And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm not going to lie. I think it's going to be a different but the same time fun transfer window. So my number one is Miralem Pjanic. Now, you say, oh, this Juve supporter starts from the Juve player. But no, I'm starting from here because the news that are coming from different sources are suggesting that he's been talked about between Juve and 3 different teams. The one that I'm not going to be talking about is PSG because I simply don't see them having any players that could be included in this deal that that PSG is willing to send to Juve or the Juve is willing to take. So I don't think as of right now there is any sort of base there to move forward with a conversation on Miralem Pjanic between PSG and Juventus. So I'm gonna be focusing on these 2 deals. So this is my number 2 and number 1 actually at the same time, and those 2 deals both revolve around Miralem Pjanic. Number 1 is the exchange between Miralem Pjanic and Artur from Barcelona. Now, here's my thing, right? Pjanic, in my opinion, is a great player. I think he's underrated in Europe especially, but in Italy as well. Supporters, even Juventus supporters, don't appreciate how good he is and how flawless, in my opinion, his game is. The problem with Pjanic is that he's been asked to play in a position that doesn't fit his way of playing. So with Max Allegri, before Sarri came this past off-season, he was playing as a regista, so as a quarterback for the team, but he wasn't given that 2-touch football. So Sarri likes to play 1 touch, 2 touches. So stop the ball right away, and that wasn't the game with Allegri at all. And Pjanic has excelled with Allegri. The first season at Juve, when Juventus went to the Champions League final in Cardiff, this was 2017, of course, lost to Real Madrid, but that was his perfect football day, in my opinion. Pjanic at his peak was 2017 with a 4-2-3-1 when he used to play in front of the defense with Sami Khedira. And over the years, he has been moved to more of a central role in a 3-man midfield. But again, the amount of balls he was playing and the amount of touches he was allowed to do in Allegri's scheme were much different than what Sarri is asking him. So this season, he kind of saw his playing quality dropping. And I think that's why Juve are trying to sell him. I don't think this is a knock on Pjanic by the management. I just think that at his age, he's probably going to be, even for him, it's going to be better to move somewhere else because I think he still has a lot to offer to a variety of clubs, especially Barcelona. That's actually the team that apparently is in talks with Juventus for a swap. I think it would be perfect in that midfield with Busquets and De Jong at the moment, but we'll see if they do other movements as well. But I think he's literally the best player to play in that position. During Barcelona golden age, that 3 midfield trio that was Busquets, Xavi, Iniesta, they were complementary to each other because you had Busquets, which is, the guy in the middle of the pitch, not great with his feet in terms of like pure technique, but amazing at what he did with short passes, his physical ability to come back, get the ball out of the defense, sometimes even dropping back between the 2 centre backs, to kind of play the ball from behind. Then you had Xavi, which is, just an incredible player. They had basically their regista role, but it was moved more to the side of Busquets. So it was more of a triangle rather than a midfielder of 3 people on the same line. And then you had Iniesta, which in my opinion is just the football at its peak. I loved Iniesta. I think he's criminally underrated. The fact that he never won a Ballon d'Or, especially in 2010, is blasphemy to me. But nonetheless, he was that player that would provide, that like ability to get through the lines and the dribbling and, that amazing touch that he had that could find anybody at any point. So I think Barcelona are trying to recreate that in a sense. Now the interpretation of this new trio is going to be different because we're talking about here 2 generational talents and Busquets, which is a great player for what he does, but I don't think in another scheme it would have been as good. Now to recreate this, it will be impossible. However, you can try to get players that kind of match that description of these 3 midfields. Of course, Busquets is still there. Highlander probably going to be there for another couple of years. So that position is sort of, already taken care of. Then last year they brought in De Jong that I believe in their minds should be the new Iniesta for them. So the kind of players I said, that's ability to pass the ball, but also to, get in with the ball and create space for. It used to be Neymar with Iniesta, or before him Alexis Sanchez or Pedrito, or whoever is playing on their left side, and it's giving them that Iniesta type role, so the ability to kind of confuse the defense. On the other side, they've been playing with Artur, they've been playing with Rakitic, they have Vidal, but all those players, I don't think they fit that Xavi kind of idea of playing, okay? Because Vidal used to be an amazing player. I loved Vidal at his time as Juve, and the Bayern was also good. But of course, it's not the Xavi player, It's more of that, dog that's coming at you, tackle machine, a interception machine, but definitely not the pure class of football at all. Rakitic is probably a player that's, has seen his better days, and Artur, it's a weird player to place. I'll be talking about him in a second. So to finish up, I think Pjanic will actually interpret that role incredibly well, because he has the quality to play like Xavi did, so with his regista moved a bit forward, and at that point he also doesn't have any defensive responsibilities, which will make him free to get in between the lines and make plays like Xavi used to do, so kind of handling the team from a far further position up the pitch compared to what an actual regista usually do, which will be covered by Busquets behind him. And playing on that side with Messi, I think we're gonna, if this swap becomes reality, I think it's gonna be real fun for Barcelona supporters. And on the other hand, you have Artur for Juventus. Now, Artur is a Brazilian midfielder, so you'll know what you get. Amazing feet, and this crazy genius in a sense that's gonna be providing Juve's midfield with something they don't have. However, I'm afraid that this would be kind of a positionless player, and in Sarri's scheme, maybe he wants to place him in front of the defense, or maybe he wants to move it more on the right side, keeping Bentancur in front of the defense. The only certainty is that he's not a proven commodity. He comes from Brazil. He only has a few years of experience in Europe, so it would be more of a project exchange for Juventus compared to what Barcelona would get with Pjanic right away. So we'll see what happens, but to be honest, I see this exchange more one-sided than people in Barcelona may think, because I think Pjanic will fit perfectly in their scheme, and I think Artur will have a lot of trouble getting in the team, in the starting 11 in the first place. He is 6 years younger, so that's probably the side that you will be kind of, getting something back, but at the same time, I don't see it happening as of right now. And as a number 2 transfer market rumor, we have the same player Pjanic being moved to Chelsea for Jorginho. Now, this one I can 100% see happening, because Jorginho is like Sarri's son. He was almost a Manchester City player, and then Sarri got signed by Chelsea. Chelsea stepped in, 60 million euros. He was moved. And now it seems like Sarri wants him to Juve. Now, I'm a fan of Jorginho, okay? Even in Napoli, I always liked the way he played. Now, he's the kind of midfielder that doesn't really, it doesn't have the flashes of others. So when you talk to a supporter, they will tell you, well, this guy, it doesn't provide any more than we already have. But that's absolutely not true. The fact that he doesn't have the dribble, or he doesn't score 10 goals a season, doesn't make this guy any less good at what he does. And I think in that position is one of the best there is. And that regista position that Sarri wants him to play, I think is one of the best around. And also, he knows how to play that position. He's going to do exactly what Sarri wants him to do, which is what, in theory, should help the team to get better and get quicker on the ball, the way they get out from a defensive situation to convert to an offensive situation. And Jorginho has this amazing ability to basically get the ball, but he already has seen where he's going to pass the ball. If you watch Chelsea game, you can see that this guy kind of plans his passes ahead. So he knows how to place himself in that line to get then the ball to the striker, to the winger with one touch, which is exactly what Sarri wants and what Pjanic cannot do. On the other hand, I don't see this as a good transfer for Chelsea, in the sense that they don't need a player like Pjanic, because if their idea is to play with a 4-3-3 with Kovacic and Kante, they should keep Jorginho, because Pjanic is just another player like Kovacic completely. Plus, they also have Loftus-Cheek that's gonna come back, and they don't have a player like like Jorginho at all. So we shall see what happens. On one hand, I can see Barcelona being completely perfect for Pjanic and Juve being completely perfect for Jorginho, but unfortunately, the players that then have to be involved in the two singular swaps, I don't see them fitting in the other team. So I don't know how this is gonna go, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's an extra team that just comes in at the end and takes him, because it seems like Pjanic's time at Juve is done. And I don't see Jorginho leaving, and Artur is probably gonna be staying as well. Rumor number 3 is an exciting one, and it seems to be very close to be completed, and that's Sané moving from Manchester City to Bayern Munich. So we already talked about this, tendency of Bayern to bring in young players and let them develop behind older ones. However, that's not the case for Leroy Sané. Now, everybody remembers Sané as this wonder kid that moved from Schalke 04 to Manchester City a few years ago after impressing against Real Madrid in the Champions League. But he's not that young anymore in a sense, because he's born in 1996, he's 24 years of age. So he's still young for normal people's age, but in football, if at 24 you haven't exploded, you probably aren't as good as people thought you were. However, with Sané, I think he's going to prove a lot of people wrong. I think this transfer is going to happen. He apparently already agreed on a transfer, with Bayern. So he agreed to join Bayern. They already agreed on the salary. And now it's just a question of whether Man City is going to agree with Bayern as well for a transfer fee. Now, I don't know how long that's going to take, but I think once the player has given his yes to the other team, it makes it much easier to get a deal done, especially because Sané has been, quite overshadowed at City between Bernardo Silva, Mahrez, Sterling. So I don't think he has a place in the squad anymore, at least not in the starting 11. And I can see him going back to Germany, especially in the year that's eventually going to take us to the Euros, and then the year after with the World Cup. I can see him want to go. And Germany up top, they have a lot of competition, so it wouldn't be a given that he would be, included in the squad if, even if he didn't play at City as a starting 11 member. So I think this one's going to happen. It's very intriguing in my opinion, because Bayern up top, they're going to lose Lewandowski real soon, but he's going to be playing for a while, I think a couple of years at least at high level. And on the side, they have Coman, of course, but he's the kind of player that's you can't count on too much, because he's been injured many times, and very severe ones. A few years ago, he came out and said that the next big injury he would quit football, even though he's still real young, same age as Sané. But those are tough injuries, so I don't know how long it's gonna be there for. And then they have Gnabry on the other side. Now, at the same time, you had Müller, Perisic. We don't know if he's gonna stay, if he's gonna go back to Inter, but nonetheless, Sané will fit very, very nicely. Imagine having a front three of Gnabry, Lewandowski, and Sané. I mean, that's pretty scary. And Gnabry and Sané are so young that, if Bayern manages to get a younger striker in as well, maybe a Werner, even though I don't see him going to Bayern, and we'll talk about him a bit later in the podcast, or maybe a Kai Havertz next year, man, that would be insane. I'm not gonna lie to you, because they complement each other so well. Gnabry is so good and so physical as a winger. That's why he can also play as a striker. But Sané has that quickness, is so fast, and he has the dribbling, the ability to get the ball far away from the goal. But even he has been playing striker for Germany a few times, so all those players are interchangeable. And with Lewandowski it's a bit harder, but imagine a front three of Sané, Havertz, and Gnabry, and none of them has an actual position. And I think this is just a further sign that we're going towards a positionless football, in my opinion. Trainers are trying to get a lot of people, and I talked about this in the last podcast, that can do more than one thing, because that's so much better in terms of what it gives you the ability to do during the game, compared to a player that only can play one position. So I think Sané is going to be another one of these young players that's going to be coming into Bayern, and is going to keep building up this incredible team that every year seems to be one piece away. So we'll see what happens there, but I'm very confident this is going to work out, and I'm telling you, this could be one of the best transfers I've ever seen in terms of how well a players fit in a certain system. Number 4, it's time to go to England, but we're kind of sticking to the Bundesliga for both of those, for number 4 and number 5. But number 4 is Jadon Sancho, that apparently is interesting in signing with Chelsea. Now, Sancho, of course, moved to Borussia Dortmund from Manchester City, where he used to play in the academy. And since he moved, he's been improving every year, and it's actually getting to a stage where it seems crazy that nobody understood how valuable this guy could have been at City. And now this goes back, I don't want to stress this too much, but it goes back to the same topic I talked about before with bigger teams not focusing enough on young talent, but trying to go for the sure thing, and then end up having don't having a way of changing the guard, getting younger. And the same thing goes for Sancho. If the academy was Arsenal's academy or another kind of club, he probably could have stayed in England, and who knows where he would have been now. But at City, they tend to buy, especially as strikers and wingers, a lot of players, so he had to leave. But it seems clear that he wants to go back to England. And I think Chelsea is a pretty good fit for him. Now, I don't know if it will happen, because as I talked about before, I can see a lot of swaps deals happening, but I don't know if there is going to be a big money deal like the one that Sancho will require, because this guy is probably going to go for 120, 150 million pounds. So it's unlikely from an economical point of view that this will happen, but it's a perfect guy for Chelsea, almost as much as Sané would be for Bayern Munich, because Chelsea, of course, they have a lot of strikers up top, a lot of wingers. Of course, Pulisic came from Dortmund last year. Then they have Asamoah, of course, talent from the academy. Mason Mount has been playing there as well, but it's more of a midfielder role. Pedro's going to leave. Willian's going to leave. So, they need to bring in extra talent on the wings. And I think Sancho will actually be perfect for them because, Chelsea is lacking that speed in terms of, I'm not talking about pure speed like Havertz or Pulisic, because they both have it, but I think they lack the speed with the ball, which is not the same thing as, a fast guy is not always the fastest guy with the ball. And I think Sancho could be that guy for Chelsea. So again, the ability to basically create that, that advantage up top by dribbling over his defender, creating that advantage in the box maybe, or the ability to cross in for Tammy Abraham or Giroud, because he can do that with both feet. So that's also an advantage for Chelsea. And I think, they want to bring in English talent as well, because Frank Lampard's revolution seems to revolve around that with, a lot of his guys, Mason Mount, Abraham, Havertz, James. He's trying to introduce them to the team, and they're playing important roles already. And I think Sancho will just be another one of these for a club that I think understood the importance of having national talent in their team in order to win. And I think they're going to try and increase the presence of English players with Sancho this offseason. Number 5, we're basically staying exactly where I am right now. That's Liverpool. We're going to talk about Timo Werner, that seems to be basically a Liverpool player already. So nothing has been, nothing is official yet. But Liverpool has kind of identified Werner to be the striker that they want to bring in for next season. Now, Liverpool just won Champions League, so this is, kind of a silly thing to say, but apparently they think that their place of the pitch where they lack something is the striker position. They have Firmino, of course, but they're not so convinced about Origi, despite the fact that he basically took them to the final with that goal against Barcelona from, the legendary corner kick last year. But nonetheless, it seems like Origi is on the move, and that Werner is going to be the guy coming in. Now, it's going to be interesting to see the dynamics there, because, of course, you already have Firmino that I personally don't like. I don't know, it's just a style thing. I don't like the way he plays, and I don't like him as a player. I can't deny the fact that he's a good player. Just personally, I don't like him. So but at the same time, he's loved by people in Liverpool, and Klopp seems to have a lot of trust in him. So we'll see what happens if Werner comes over, because at this point, he's a well-known striker that's not gonna come to play and to stay on the bench. I think he will go if he has certainty that he will be playing. And with Firmino there, that means that they will have to tell Firmino that he won't be playing anymore. Now, I can see Klopp moving to a 4-2-3-1, having Firmino basically playing a cam, but I don't know. That could also be an option, especially because Liverpool, their midfield is good, but I don't think it's great. I think if Werner comes in and Klopp wants to change scheme, I can see Werner replacing Wijnaldum, having Fabinho and Henderson in front of the defensive line, and then those four fun and magicians up top. So that could also be an option. That's believable 100%. So I don't know. Fit-wise, I'm not so certain. I've been seeing him before the Christmas break. He was unstoppable. After that, I don't know if this is a transfer talk that kind of get into his head, but after that he wasn't as good. He's a very nice player in the sense that it's a very atypical striker. He can get in behind. He likes to come get the ball and start from way behind the line of attack. So I can see him being very similar to Firmino in that sense, a player that's able to play the ball from the striker position but to facilitate the wingers and also score a lot of goals, because goal scoring wise is definitely much better than what Firmino is. There it is, another episode of the podcast coming to an end. It was fun to talk about transfer market. As I said, it's one of my favorite things in football. Unfortunately, we don't know when this is gonna happen in the first place. It could be 1st July like usual, but it's more likely gonna happen around September, October. So still a long time to go. But it's always fun to talk about these possible deals and to analyze the possible fit of these players in their new teams. Nonetheless, thank you all for listening to this episode. We're gonna be talking again on Monday after the games that are gonna be happening this weekend in Germany. I just want to say, everyone, thank you a lot for everyone who's been listening. The numbers are going up, and I just recently started to send my podcast to Apple Podcasts as well. So if you happen to have access to it, if you want to listen there and leave a comment, leave a review with a 5-star, that would be great, because it's going to allow me to rise up the ladder and get the podcast heard by more people. So that would be great. But again, thank you so much for everyone who has been listening over the course of these 5 episodes. As I said, I'll be seeing you all on Monday. This was the Sports with Frank podcast. I've been Francesco. Stay safe, and I'll see you soon.